So now we need to get all of the movies for a given genre from the database and feed that to JSON. And we already have a function in movies-db.go, and I'm looking at the Go backend. We already have a function called all, and if we're going to get all of the movies from the database for a given genre, it would seem to be that that's almost identical to this function. Now I could, if I wanted to, and a purist might do this, create an entirely new function called all by genre, or I could take advantage of this function and just modify it a little bit. And I do it really easily. If I make the all function take one parameter, genre, and that parameter is actually variadic, ... int. So you can put 0 or n ints as arguments in this. So that means that all doesn't actually require that parameter, but it will take it if you supply it. And then down here, after the defer cancel, I just declare a new variable called where, and that's an empty string. And then I say if the len of genre, which is the parameter this function takes, if it's greater than 0, then I have a parameter that's been supplied. And I'll just redefine where to be equal to format.sprintf, and I should actually let Visual Studio Code import that for me. There, that's easier. And give it this string, where id is in, where id in, open parentheses, select movie underscore id from movies underscore genres, where genre id is equal to %d, and then I just substitute genre 0. And that will be whatever ID was supplied when we called this function. So that gives me a where clause. And then I just modify my main query to say format.sprintf. And just here, after from movies, I put a string in there, a string placeholder. And then I'll move this up to the previous line so it's not quite so ugly. And put comma where. And if no parameter is supplied, it will be substituting an empty string for %s. But if an int is given to this all function when we call it, then it will put the where clause in there. And that's really all I have to do. At that point, there's no other change required. So we can now go and create a handler for this. So in our moviehandlers.go, let's write a new handler that says get all movies by genre. So I can just copy this one as a starting point and paste it in here and call this get all movies by genre. And it's a very simple handler. All we're going to do is get our params, and we'll use the HTTP router's built-in function to do that. Params is assign the value of HTTP router dot params from context, and we hand it our context, our dot context. Then we convert our genre ID, which we're going to get from our root that we'll make in a minute, and check for an error, and that's strconv a2i, and we want to get from params by name. We'll look for genre ID, and that's what we'll put in our root. And we'll check for an error, and we'll just copy and paste an error from here, an error check from here. Then we get our movies, and potentially an error from the database by calling app.models.db.all, and this time we handed an int, genre ID. Check for an error, and then write our JSON. Error is assigned the value of, or error was equal to, app.writeJSON, and we hand it w, our status, our variable movies, and wrap it in movies. And check for an error. So that's it for the handler. Now let's go to the roots. And right here, let's just duplicate this line and change it from movies to movies/, and we'll use the same key we specified in our handler, genre ID. And we call get all movies by genre. So, if I stop my application and start my application and go back to my web browser and open a new tab and say localhost 4000 v1 movies and give it some genre ID. Say give it 2. I don't even know what genre that is. And there is syntax error at end of input. Well, let's go find what we did wrong in our database function. So it has to be this one. Might want to close that parentheses. There we go. And start this up again. And go back and reload this. We get the Shawshank Redemption. So that seems to work the way that it should. So our next step is to go and to write the necessary components and logic in our front end to display the list of movies by genre. And we'll get started on that in the next lecture.